Hello and welcome everyone to GitLab monthly release kickoff call. Today we'll kick off release 14.5, slated for November 22nd. I'd like to remind everyone that the information discussed today is related to upcoming products, features, and functionality, and is for informational purposes only. So please do not rely on it for purchasing or planning decisions. And just like with all projects, what we share here is subject to change without notice at the sole discretion of GitLab Inc. Okay, with that, let's get to the fun part. We invite everyone to contribute, and you can do so by finding the issues and videos of your interest on our kickoff page. I'm particularly excited about this kickoff because it just so happens that David and Kenny are occupied elsewhere, so we have 3 new faces at the kickoff today. We'll start off with the dev section with Sarah Warner, our group product manager for the create stage. Then we'll switch over to the secure and protect stages with Hillary Benson, our director for these stages. And then we'll move on to the ops section that'll be covered by Jackie Porter, group product manager for the verify stage. And then Josh Lambert, our director of enablement, will bring us home. Now, before I hand off to Sarah, I want to reiterate that our focus on reliability, performance, and security continues, along with usability and application security testing leadership. Take it away, Sarah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anoop. As he said, I'm here to talk about the featured highlights of the dev section. Let me get my screen shared. All right. We're going to begin within the create stage, focusing on the code review group. 14.5 code review is going to be focused on a feature called merge requests that require my attention. So everybody has a list in the upper right-hand corner of the screen that gives you a list of merge requests you're assigned to. With the release of the reviewer feature earlier in the year, you can now be added to a merge request for someone requesting your code review of that MR. I've now got 2 lists of merge requests that I have to manage with very little indication of relative urgency or perhaps which MRs are awaiting my attention so that I can unblock other teams reliant on my review. This feature is going to involve a couple of UX enhancements, both to that sidebar menu that we just looked at and to the filterable list of MRs. This is going to involve a couple of new icons as well as hoverovers that give you direct indication of things that are awaiting on you so you can help your overall development organization reduce cycle time. Moving on to the Giddily group, also in the create stage. So as of late, we've been making a lot of improvements to a service we call Giddily Cluster, a highly available option for Git repository storage. In 14.5, the team is going to get started on a critical feature we're really excited about called repository level incremental backups. That's a mouthful. Let me give you a little bit more detail on that. So this is a disaster recovery method that allows you to back up repositories stored in a Giddily cluster. This will be an alternative to a commonly used disaster recovery method called disk snapshots. Because of the distributed nature of Giddily cluster, it's really hard to back it up using disk snapshots because during the snapshot, which is not an instant in time, it takes multiple minutes, maybe even tens of minutes to take one, your disk is going to continue to change. To utilize disk snapshots reliably and accurately with the Giddily cluster service, this requires you to take your systems offline so you can clear the Git operations write queues and take a snapshot that you can recover from reliably. Incremental backups aim to provide a reliable disaster recovery method with 0 downtime, lower operating costs, and simpler operability for Giddily cluster. And finally, from the editor group within the create stage, we're putting the finishing touches on what we call the Web Ide State Redesign. This multi-milestone effort was focused on overall improving the reliability, maintainability, and performance of the Web IDE. In 14.5, we're focused on the final decoupling and simplifying the utilized file system on the back end. These enhancements are going to make the Web IDE more performant and therefore easier to use for users to help them reduce cycle time overall. Moving on, manage stage is up next. Let me move my Zoom bar. Give me 1 second. Okay. The Manage Optimize group is working on an enhancement to the issue analytics chart. Today, the issue analytics chart shows you a monthly count of all the issue opened within a single project. We've gotten a ton of feedback that information in and of itself does not give you great insight into how issue adoption for your team overall is going. First up, we're going to be adding a new metric to that chart that will give you total opened accumulated issues over time, so that in addition to the monthly count of open issues, you can see how over time that number is increasing so that you can help issue adoption throughout your teams. And to wrap up with the plan stage, we're going to be working on enhancements to the existing iteration feature. The first version of iterations was released at the group level, where you were able to create iterations with a single cadence. Now, I got a ton of feedback that was a bit restrictive for teams within a group. You have teams operating in different projects that may be faster at iterating or may utilize the feature in a different way for their unique workflows. The enhancements for this are going to allow you to create iterations that have unique cadences and multiple cadences within that group. So you can create them and then map them to your projects to be applied to the issues therein. All right. That's it for 14.5 dev section highlights. Noop, back to you.
We're going to hand it over to Hillary for the section.
Great, thanks, Anoop. Let me just quick share out my screen. Okay, hopefully you're seeing the right thing there. All right, so as Anoop mentioned up top, SaaS reliability and performance remains a major area of focus for us. And this milestone, much of the section is continuing that work from last milestone into this milestone. So the DAST threat, the DAST and threat insights teams are both primarily focused on database scalability improvements this milestone. And the composition analysis team is primarily focused on burning down security issues. We do have a couple teams that are planning to work on and deliver new feature functionality. So the first thing I'll touch on here is what the static analysis team is working on. So the SaaS team is working on adding additional support for infrastructure as code scanning. So today in SaaS, we support scanning of files containing code or scanning of binaries. This IAC capability will allow users to analyze certain types of configuration files for security issues as well. So for example, users might want to look at something like a Terraform template for common misconfigurations. There are a lot of use cases for checking different kinds of configurations in these files. For instance, this might allow you to put checks in place to help you reduce your overall network attack surface by scanning for configurations that expose applications on, for instance, an unnecessarily broad set of network ports. Or you might want to scan for instances where encryption or logging hasn't been turned on, things of that nature. And we're evaluating adding support for a variety of configuration file types that include things like Terraform, CloudFormation, and Ansible. For customers who are interested in this, we are maintaining an issue to collect customer input, interest, and feedback. And so this is where we can collect that information. And then also the container security team is working on a number of items this milestone that will be delivered in future milestones. And so I'll touch on a couple of things that team is working on here. The first of those is adding support for SaaS scan execution policies. So today we support scan execution policies for SaaS and secret detection. What that enables you to do is to make sure that those scans are running at defined times whenever they are required. So the work this milestone will incorporate SaaS support for that as well. So that'll allow users to ensure that SaaS scans are running when required, whether that's in the pipeline or on a daily or weekly scheduled cadence. And then finally, major usability improvement coming to container image scanning. This will help eliminate duplicate findings. So when scanning an image today, users see all findings from both the main branch and the feature branch that they're working on, even if those findings correspond to the same problems. And so this work, this milestone, is to eliminate those duplicate findings for most users. so that only the security issues that are in that feature branch are what's displayed. And that pretty much says it all for this next section, this milestone. So with that, I'm happy to talk about what is going on over in ops.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sarah and Hillary, for covering those exciting features and enhancements in your sections. Kind of nervous to be following up after you all. As a quick introduction, my name is Jackie Porter, the group manager for the Verify stage. And for the 14.5 kickoff, I'll be subbing in for Kenny Johnston, the senior director over the ops section. And the ops section contains all of the experiences related to the enabling of developers to effectively leverage configuration and operations tasks in GitLab after a developer commits code. The 5 stages within this section are verify, package, release, configure, and monitor. We have a ton of great enhancements and features in each of these stages for 14.5, and I'm unable to cover all of these in 7 minutes. So I definitely encourage you to check out the direction pages for each of these teams. For this kickoff, I'll also be covering 2 main themes: GitLab hosted first, which is about supporting our GitLab.com experience, and adoption through usability, where you'll see these issues are about deepening the user experience and specific features. First up in the GitLab hosted first theme is the first iteration for expanding CI/CD minute usage quotas to the group view for you to have better visibility into your CI/CD minute consumption. In this particular issue, the pipeline execution group will be adding a GraphQL endpoint to expose the data to monthly charts that will be on the group usage quotas page in a subsequent iteration. Next up is another issue from the verify stage, where the pipeline authoring group will be focusing on investigating a variable endpoint that is consuming the error budget for this group. Error budgets are the mechanism for managing availability at GitLab in the product area. So this is one mechanism we can use to triage specific endpoints that could impact availability of the GitLab product. After investigating this endpoint, the team will be able to optimize the experience and ensure variables are performing per our availability target. In this milestone, the testing group is also going to be delivering an easier way for you to navigate artifact deletion. This will enable you to have better management of storage consumption costs related to artifacts. You'll no longer have to write tedious scripts to manage the deletion. And not only will this save you time on scripts, but bulk deleting artifacts all at once will help you impact your storage costs immediately. Another super enhancement for this theme comes from the pages category in the release stage, where the team will be implementing flags and tests to support a rate limit per source IP. This iteration will help unlock usage limits for GitLab pages and mitigate potential use in the future, meaning you'll have more resilient service in pages. Lastly, for our GitLab hosted first theme is an issue from the configure group, where the team will be fine-tuning their error budgets by adding custom AppDex targets for their web and API endpoints. This will ensure that we're able to give you a speedy and fast experience in the configure feature set. Transitioning over to our second theme is adoption through usability, where we deliver features that are focused on user experience and deepening the functionality of areas by shipping subsequent iterations of those features. First up is a highly anticipated feature from our package stage, where the group will be investing in the experience of Npm Packages by unlocking the ability to extract metadata from Npm Packages. This data can be used to verify the correct package or even confirm that the package was built properly. Previously, you may have noticed that there was several pieces of metadata missing from the API, which made conducting those tasks fairly challenging. That will be remedied with this issue. The configure and pipeline execution groups will also be focusing on supporting a UX OKR, which includes reworking several widget experiences across GitLab. In this particular issue, the configure team will be focusing on the Terraform widget. Other issues that the verify stage will be working on include the metrics MR widget and the test summary MR widget. Each of these issues will be about implementing the UX specifications for the merge request reports framework, which gives you a seamless experience for interacting with MR widgets across GitLab. Third up in our adoption through usability focus is from the release stage, where the team will be enhancing the environment's management experience by enabling the automatic deletion of stopped environments. This will speed up your jobs by removing unnecessary environments. This is a great enhancement that will make navigating environments much easier and more efficient. Next up, the pipeline execution group has heard from you that it can be really challenging to navigate the pipeline and jobs index pages. In this milestone, the group is looking forward to restructuring the page to give you a more intuitive view of the pipeline index page, so you can easily identify relevant information related to your pipelines. This will come in handy when you're triaging a failed pipeline related to a specific commit. Another great enhancement comes from the runner group in the verify stage, where the team will be adding support for OpenShift in the GitLab runner. Out of this issue, you'll be able to get a GitLab supported version for Power 9, unlocking your ability to seamlessly use GitLab with OpenShift. Lastly, for our adoption through usability theme is from the monitor stage. There are a few planned features related to alerts and incidents, which will unlock dog fooding and more advanced use cases of these two features. One such experience is to expand the post responses for generic HTTP endpoints, which will include the alert ID. This will unlock a richer information experience when using these endpoints for you to easily navigate alerts coming from GitLab. This wraps up the ops section 14.5 kickoff. And as I noted earlier, I was unable to cover all the great enhancements across the team. And it would definitely be worth a quick look at the stages direction pages for what's coming in 14.5. I'll pass it over to Josh Lambert to cover the enablement section.
Thanks, Jackie. That's some really exciting features and changes coming up from the ops section. I will go into the enablement section, and we will talk about GitLab hosted first as a theme here. GitLab hosted first is areas where we're working towards ensuring that GitLab.com provides a great experience for all of its users and is performant, reliable, and scalable as well. And we're working on kind of two features here that work together, and that is decomposing the overall GitLab's database to improve its scalability. We've been working on this for some time now, but the overall problem is that you can only buy so big of a database instance, and Postgres only lets you write to one node at a given time. And so that sets a natural ceiling on how much write traffic you can have go through. To help address this, we are moving 50% of our writes to a secondary database cluster, and that way we can have additional headroom by having kind of two different clusters that can now scale independently of each other. We are very mindful that not all of our self-managed customers need this additional level of scalability. However, it is there if they would like it. And so we are making sure that this does not add additional maintenance and operational overhead to self-managed instances that don't necessarily need it going forward. And so we are working on addressing some features that need some changes to support multiple databases. And we are also working on updating our tooling across the overall service to support multiple databases as well. So things like background migrations, re-indexing functionality and partitioning, as well as things like how we run some migrations by our dbmigrate command. So those are all helping to provide additional headroom for GitLab's Postgres-based database. We're taking a similar approach also for our Redis instances. And so we want to ensure that these can continue to scale as well into the future. And so what we are doing is we are similarly decomposing or shifting some of our workloads over into a separate Redis cluster. This is optional and available if you need it. And we are working towards this on our GitLab.com service for our session keys. And this will move about 5% of the overall load off of the current Redis cluster and onto the new one to continue to kind of provide that additional headroom availability. From there, the last item on the SaaS first or GitLab hosted first theme is we are working to improve the interoperability between Ide cluster and Prefect and Geo. There are a couple areas where this is not where we'd like it to be, and so we're working to fix it. The Geo team in 14.5 is continuing to work on avoiding repo renames between these two services. And what can happen is that the Geo can rename a repo, and Ide cluster isn't necessarily aware of it. And so these two things can become out of sync and start to cause problems. And so we are working towards changing Geo so it no longer renames repositories, which can trip up Ide cluster. So those are things we are doing to ensure GitLab.com provides a good experience for our users and also our self-managed customers who need that available additional headroom. And we can move on to adoption through usability. We are working on two areas here. The first one is global search and also some improvements to Geo. The global search one is really exciting. A lot of users
Hello. It looks like Josh's screen is frozen. Can the rest of you hear me? Just if you nod, I will nod.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, we can hear you. I'll give a quick summary of the global search piece, but I'm not sure what else was in Josh's agenda yet. So in global search, we're going to be working on bringing labels in to issues and merge requests to allow for that experience to include filtering and fasting with labels. And I'll go ahead and start seeing if I can pull up the rest of his if we want to come back. Oh, looks like Josh just unfroze.
Hey, sorry, I briefly lost power and my internet connection went down there for a second.
No worries, Josh. John covered the search related feature, so you can move to the next.
Great. Thanks, John, for jumping in there. Appreciate it. So moving on to geosecondaries, we are working towards improving the user experience for geosecondaries. Today, end users have to be aware that there is a geosecondary and which one they want to use. And this provides initial cognitive load and effort from our administrators to get the word out and ensure usage. And so we want to make sure that this is as transparent as possible. And so going forward, we are working to support a single URL for all GitLab activities and workflows, whether it's the web, Git, and so on. And so once this is done, and we're getting very close now, we're largely in testing phases here. You can now have multiple secondaries. You can bring them up as demand requires or as your users change where they are throughout the world. And this is completely transparent to end users. All they will see is utilizing GitLab normally, and it will just not be faster than otherwise would have been without that secondary in place. And so this would be a really exciting improvement for all of those users who utilize geosecondaries for GitLab. From there, we can move on to new markets, and we are working towards two areas here. The first one is we want to have Red Hat certification for our newly released GitLab Server operator, which went GA just last release in 14.4. Very excited about that. And we want to go through and complete certification so folks who are looking for that stamp of approval from Red Hat can be confident that we've met the requirements from the Red Hat standpoint. And we are also continuing to work towards a FIPS compliant GitLab service. And that way for customers who are in public sector or perhaps work with public sector can more easily meet this compliance requirement with GitLab itself as a self-managed service. So looking forward to those items from enablement section, and I'll pass it back to you, Anu, to wrap us up.
Thank you. Thank you, team, for a very thoughtful prioritization. I know we do this monthly, so it's really important, and I appreciate the thought that goes into it. I heard a lot of amazing things. I heard usability front and center. I love the MR needing my attention work that we're doing. Amazing iteration towards the web IDE performance and ease of use. We've seen a lot of great capabilities come on that over the last several releases. multiple automated iteration cadences, so everyone can have the freedom to pick what works for them. Removing duplicates from container scanning. We know that lots of duplicates make it hard to find the needle in the haystack, if you will. Better visibility into your CI/CD consumption at a group level. We all need that. MR widget improvements. It's a very often cited improvement that our SUS surveys and others have revealed. So super excited about that. Intuitive view of our pipeline index page to identify relevant information and triage the failed pipelines that sometimes do occur. And then secondary sites proxying to primary with a single URL, all great usability stuff. I also heard a lot of reliability, security, and performance focus. FIPS compliance for Gitly service, which I know a lot of regulated and government institutions require from us. Reliable disaster recovery with incremental repo backups for our self-managed customers. Improving the Gitly cluster and geo interoperability to avoid repo renames. All HA stuff. We just noticed Josh went out and came back in 30 seconds. We want to do that for all our customers with GitLab in general. Per source IP rate limits for pages, again, an important thing. Deleting stopped environments automatically, cleanup and saving cloud dollars, continued focus on database decomposition and dedicated Redis cluster for session keys. Awesome, awesome stuff. And then finally, last but not least, AST leadership. The enablement for ISE SAST scanning is amazing. Helps you detect misconfigs, reduce network attack surface, detect unencrypted logins as such. Why wouldn't you want to use that? And then SAST scan execution policies to run them on required cadences again. I think this is going to be one of the most awesome releases ever. So with that, thank you everyone for attending, and we'll see you again next month.